Listen, get tougher before we'll discover that each of us has their own rise. Listen, get tougher before we'll discover it's how I feel about this right now. Holding on ya, holding on ya, holding on. One moment, one moment, one moment. In my mind, in my mind. One moment, I say that one moment in this place. One moment, one moment. Sometimes.
Hello and welcome to Chef Talks 2. My name is Elizabeth KERR, and as Director of Marketing and Admissions Develop here at the Stratford Chef School, I'm thrilled to have you join us. Today is the third webinar in a series of chats where we at first took you behind the scenes of our school, and then in our second webinar introduced you to faculty members and discussed topics like the methodologies of cooking, that entrepreneurial spirit, and the science of baking. Today, we're going to continue with Chef Talks 2, and we're going to talk about the character of a chef, the fact that it takes more than knife skills to be a good chef, and tough decisions for a thoughtful chef. I'm joined today by Chef RANDI Rudner and Chef Mike Booth. Both RANDI and Mike are faculty at the Stratford Chef School, and they are dynamic leaders in our organization. But that's not all. They are also co-head chefs at the Prune restaurant here in Stratford, Ontario, and bring a wealth of experience and dedication to not only the students at the school, but to members of our community who are interested in culinary endeavors. Unfortunately, today, Chef Baxter is unable to join us. I had asked him to talk about the character of a chef, Now, I was Chef's student back in 2020. And the reason I asked him to talk about that topic was because it really struck me when he gave the lecture. So if you will bear with me and indulge me, I am going to tell you what I learned from Chef Neil Baxter when he delivered that message. Before I begin, I'll let you know, if you don't already, that Chef Neil Baxter was chef de cuisine at Rundle's restaurant here in Stratford for a long time. And Rundle's consistently was considered one of the best restaurants in Canada, and Chef Neil Baxter as well considered one of the finest, most accomplished chefs here. So let me begin with the character of a chef. When Chef approached us during that class, he summed it up quite nicely. He started the class and he said to us, to be a chef, you have to be consistent, dedicated, organized, adaptive, and resilient. Now, to be honest with you, I was taking notes, so I may have missed one or two things, but that is what captivated my attention and what I was writing down. Chef went on to explain that to be consistent as a chef is of paramount importance, that you as a chef are as good as your last meal, and that rather than striving for perfection or greatness, you must certainly strive to be consistent. That you can't deliver a bad meal, then a good meal, then a bad meal, then a great meal, but rather, as it is in so many areas of life, that you have to reach a level of excellence and maintain it. He went on to say that to be dedicated as a chef is to lead and develop a team, and to impart in all of your team members that willingness to see the end goal as a group, not as individuals, to work harmoniously, to listen, and to adapt. Chef also talked a lot about being organized. And there is an expression in the kitchen that I'm sure many of you know called mise en place. Everything in order, everything in its place. And that's what happens when you are prepping before a meal. And Chef described how at Rundle's, 20 minutes before service, he as the chef de cuisine would go around to each station and make sure that everyone was ready for meal service. Chef talked a lot about being adaptive, and we certainly learned that in school as students. With menus changing every single night, we learned that we had to adapt, to go with the flow, to keep up with everything and not let anyone down. Mistakes would happen, Chef told us, but you had to adapt to where you were in the process and ensure that as quickly as you could, you regrouped and kept going. Over the last few years, I think what everyone has seen and experienced most is that this is a resilient industry. And while Chef was guiding us about being resilient as chefs, I think all of us have seen it at that industry level. To be resilient is to accept change, to have doors closed or opportunities diminished. And what we do is we call on our resilient spirit and we forge ahead. We change our plans, we adapt our plans. Certainly all of you probably had a lot more takeout from restaurants that you might never have thought you would experience takeout from. And so, Chef imparted so much information to us. He demonstrated on a daily basis when he instructed us about the characteristics of a chef. I am really disappointed that he couldn't make it today, but I am eternally grateful that he shared that lesson with us, not only as an aspiring chef myself, but rather for me, it was just a really great life lesson that I take forward and share, obviously, every opportunity I have. Today, we're going to hear from RANDI, Rudner, and Mike Booth. And before I get into asking them questions and asking them to share their expertise on different topics, I want all of you to know that at the bottom, there is a question and answer and a chat function. Use either and pose your questions. And at the end of the seminar, webinar, we will have approximately 10-15 minutes to answer your questions. And so now I'd like to introduce you to Mike Booth. Mike is an instructor at our school. He is co-head chef, as I mentioned, at the Prune restaurant. He is our purchasing agent at the school. He is a Canadian guest chef. And having worked for him this summer, I can attest that he is just a fine human being, and you are certainly privileged to hear from him today, as he and I will sort of have a banter going back and forth about the fact that it takes a lot more than knife skills to succeed as a chef. And so I'm going to bring Mike on screen now. Hi, Mike.
Hello.
And Mike, if I can just ask you to begin, I've described, I hope, most of what you do at this school, but can you tell us a bit about your culinary journey and how you ended up here?
Well, I always liked cooking. I was born in British Columbia in the Okanagan Valley. My grandfather had an orchard. We had a small apple orchard growing up, so I was sort of always around food. And I really enjoyed how it was a bit of a celebration, you know, going out and picking fruits and eating it, making food with the family, you know, events, this, that, the other thing. So I've always had a love for food. And after going through school, going through university, I just realized that food is where I wanted my career to take me. So I studied chemistry and graduated from Mount Allison University in New Brunswick. And then following that, I moved to Europe, where I worked in a Michelin star restaurant in Italy just to decide if culinary was the direction I wanted to go with my life, and decided it was. So I moved back to Canada, to Stratford to attend the Stratford Chef School, and I've been in Stratford ever since. That was almost 20 years ago.
Wow. And I bet it's gone by very quickly.
No, not at all.
And Mike has a sense of humor. So Mike, the reason I asked you to participate today is because I have very fond memories of being your student. And if I can just back up a bit, I remember being quite alarmed, for lack of a better word, that I was going to be taking so many academic subjects, as well as spending a lot of time in the kitchen. And the second class on the first day that in level 1 was food costing, and you were my instructor. And I like math, and food costing was, you know, fun for me, sometimes challenging, but fun. But I really loved how you very quickly explained to us that we really did need to learn how to cost out recipes. Can you share that with our guests today? The advantages as a chef, knowing how much things cost?
Well, I mean, cost of goods is, at the end of the day, the restaurant business is a business. So to succeed in a business, you need to be profitable. So it's really, really important to be able to understand it's not about how much the food costs per se, as to how much money you should charge for it.
Yeah.
So, you know, food can cost whatever it costs, but if you don't charge the proper amount of money for the dish, then you're going to end up losing money. And restaurants have a very slim profit margin to begin with. So if you've done some incorrect math or incorrect calculations in what the food costs and how much you should charge for it, then you're not going to make as much money. So it's sort of the utmost importance. You can be the best chef, the best cook in the world, but if you can't sell the food for the proper amount of money, then your restaurant will close relatively quickly.
Yeah. And
Unfortunately.
it's just not the job of the head chef to ensure or work towards the business staying open. Certainly, if you are a cook, you have to control your own waste and the products you use. So for instance, if a recipe calls for 3 eggs, you use 3 eggs. You don't take 6 and perhaps waste 3 of them without accounting for what you're doing. It's a bit about accountability. Would you agree?
Absolutely about accountability. And I would say that the chef school, we try to train students to act responsibly in the kitchen. I mean, a lot of it is cost, but a lot of it as well is being responsible to the environment, responsible to the product itself. Reducing the amount of waste that you use is responsible in terms of not wasting money, but it's also important in terms of not wasting product. If we're talking about carrots or fish or potatoes, it doesn't really matter. A lot of work will have gone into creating those items. So you have to work with them with a care and appreciation for them, so that you're not wasting it. It's not all about money, but at the end of the day, money is an important part of it.
Right, right. Now, Mike, you are also the purchasing agent for the school. This is probably a somewhat personal question, but having gone through the program, it would seem to me that keeping track of all the different classes that go on at our school and all the dinners changing every single night between Tuesday and Saturday, how do you do that? How do you make sure that everything we need arrives on time?
It's magic.
Magic.
It's a skill set that a chef requires. You talked about being organized, being careful. I've just always had, personally, if I see something somewhere, I remember that I saw it there. So I have a really good ability to do quick inventorying. I can sort of walk into the fridge and scan the fridge and not necessarily record it in my mind exactly what we have, but I will know that I need to get eggs, I need to get cream, I need to order butter, we're low on carrots, that sort of thing. But mostly it's being really organized and taking it quite seriously. That it's food waste is a big problem. You can, again, it can become a monetary problem really quickly, but more the responsibility of not letting food go to waste, seeing that it's being used by someone rather than sitting in a corner rotting is pretty important to me. So the organization combined with a strange mind that I have in terms of seeing things and recognizing what we need and how we need it and when we need it is really important. It's also something I've been doing for a very long time. It's not something that you're just going to naturally pick up immediately. Working in restaurants, I worked with Chef Baxter at Rundle's for very many years, and obviously inventorying there was important. I was doing most of the ordering at that restaurant, and then in turn doing the ordering at the school, going through recipes, reading recipes, being able to calculate. Again, you mentioned the math class, being able to calculate how many, how much sugar you need to order if you're doing 50 liters of ice cream and a recipe calls for a cup of sugar, per recipe. What does that translate to? So a lot of it is math, but a lot of it is, like, I want to say, not sitting down with a calculator math, but more experiential math.
Right.
So
right.
yeah, it's fun. It's interesting.
Yeah. Well, I loved that class, as you know. I loved food costing. I think if I took one thing away that I've applied into my personal life that has saved me the most is when you taught us about properly scaling recipes. And I'm not necessarily talking about multiplying a recipe by 3 or something like that, but understanding that in a recipe, when you are scaling, you don't always scale every single ingredient by the amount that you're scaling the recipe. I'm thinking of chilies.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
always a common mistake
Yeah.
when scaling things up. Adding triple the amount of chilies that you normally would can get something pretty spicy pretty quickly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Well, thanks, Mike. I am going to keep you online because I'm sure we'll have questions for you. But now I would like to ask RANDI to come on screen. RANDI Rudner is our program manager. She is a Canadian guest chef. She's instructor of commodities and gastronomy for level 2 students. And she is, as I said before, co-head chef at the Prune restaurant here in Stratford. Today, I'm going to ask RANDI to talk with me a bit about tough choices for a thoughtful chef. And the reason I chose this topic and chose RANDI to speak about it is because RANDI was my level 2 gastronomy instructor. And even though I was a mature student and I felt that I had a good understanding of how things were, I was very quickly amazed at how naive I had been about food issues in the world. Perhaps I understood them at a very wide level, but I certainly didn't really get it. So today, RANDI, as we start, I just ask the same question that I asked Mike. If you could just bring us up to speed and give us a bit of a background on how your culinary career has gone up until now.
Oh gosh. I'm from Montreal originally, and I went to university in Kingston at Queen's. I have a degree in philosophy. And I worked part-time while I was in university in the hospitality industry, but in a club, a dance club. And when that club closed, I was looking for work, and I found myself working in this cooperative cafe and restaurant. And I loved it. I loved everything about it. So I stayed there for 8 years, working service on the floor, but then I moved back into the kitchen and I did breakfast and dinner and lunch and catering and pastry. And I really, really enjoyed pastry. And I stayed there until I had learned everything that everyone there had to teach me, and as much as I could teach myself. And then I moved on to another restaurant in Kingston so that I could just continue learning. And that restaurant happened to have been owned by graduates of the chef school. And they took an interest in me. The owners of that restaurant were really exceptional mentors, and they encouraged me to attend Stratford. So I did, and this is now some 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I haven't left.
Yes.
So I've been in Stratford for about 10 years. I am working at the Prune as a co-head chef with Mike. I was at Rundle's for 7 years until it closed. And I work at the chef school.
And you take good care of all of us when we're students, that's for sure. So RANDI, as you know, I really loved gastronomy class. Mm-hmm. And I loved that every single week we explored a new topic. It was a bit of a departure from how the other academic courses were delivered. And one thing that struck me one week was in relation to the fact that as a chef, in a very responsible position, you do have tough choices about what you offer on a menu, what you put on your menu. And you do have to think about how items are sourced or raised or grown. And if you have one example of when you faced a tough choice, could I ask you to share it with our guests?
Oh gosh, I mean, a chef has to make those decisions every day ongoingly, and it's not any one purchasing decision. It's, do I want these carrots or those carrots, or these eggs or those eggs, or this meat or that meat? And or this fish or that fish. And so, every time you put something on a menu, you are effectively reaffirming your values as a chef. And so it's an ongoing, I don't want to say struggle, but struggle. What sorts of products can you live with? What makes you feel good about yourself and your role in the culinary community? Where does your responsibility lie to the world around you? But also, what can you afford to put on a plate? So
Right.
there are a lot of, there's a lot of competing demands.
Yeah. So would you say that establishing very good working relationship with your suppliers could be a starting point for somebody new in the industry starting out, that you have to find those suppliers who are aligned with your values as a chef? Is that a good statement, or am I a bit off there?
No, I don't think you're off at all. And for me, that's a priority. I want to work with people in my community. I want to work with growers and producers in my community whose products I feel really good about and whose stuff makes my heart sing. You know, I need to feel my job isn't just a job. I need to feel good at it. And part of that is knowing that I'm buying things from people who care about what they're doing. And so, absolutely establishing those relationships. And a lot of those relationships did honestly come through the chef school, through the farmers and suppliers that Mike purchases from. And some of these people have become really valuable friends and mentors to me.
Right. Now, a lot of people have a conception or talk about the school being aligned with farm to table. But in fact, I know that I got a very broad education and was exposed to ingredients that I know for sure did not come from Perth County. And so when we talk about relationship with suppliers, that supplier can be sourcing products really from around the world, correct?
Exactly. And our curriculum would be very poor if we only stuck to the products that were available in Perth County between November and March. That would be really a lot of beets and really a lot of pork.
Yeah.
You know, it's which are really important ingredients and we make the most of them, but it's a limited palette of ingredients. And to provide a well-rounded education, we need our students to work with fish and exotic vegetables and exotic fruits and spices from around the world. And it's an important part of culinary education as well. And so developing relationships with responsible purveyors of those ingredients that are not from right next door, people that we can trust to bring in fish that's been harvested sustainably or in a responsible manner, and fruit that, you know, is being produced, first of all, in clean soil, and the pickers are being paid responsibly. Like, all of those things are part of the purchasing decisions that we have to make as chefs.
Right. Right. And I know that you take all of those decisions really seriously. I mean, even at the chef's school, the coffee or the tea that is chosen to go with a meal when we're in that season is important to you.
Yep. I don't want to belabor the point, but those relationships are really important. And we work with Ann Campion here in town. She owns a coffee shop and she deals with coffee farmers directly. It's directly traded coffee, and that's an important choice for us to make. Coffee is one of the biggest commodities traded in the world, and making those kinds of choices are responsible and fair and right.
Right, right. RANDI, as you move forward into a new year with your students, they'll be coming in October, a new group of level 1 students, and your level 2 students will be coming back after having worked in the industry. Has gastronomy class changed? Are there new topics to think about, or will you be expanding on your current curriculum?
Guess it changes all the time.
Mhm.
I mean, if gastronomy class is the contemporary food world,
Yeah.
that's different this year than it was last year. The world is different this year
Yeah.
than it was last year. There's always something new to learn about and explore.
Well, I think we can probably end there for now. Thank you, Randy. That was really wonderful. I love this format where it's just questions and answers, and I hope that you enjoyed it too. Thank you. Okay, everyone, you've heard from Randy Rudner, tough choices for a thoughtful chef, and you've also heard from Mike Booth, it takes more than knife skills. As well, I attempted to summarize the character of a chef, and I'm wondering if any of you have any questions. So I'm going to look down here, and we've got a couple coming in. So this is a question for Mike. And Mike,
Hi.
what do you do as a student, as a potential prospective student, if perhaps you were not good in math in high school and you did not take it at college? Can you make it through?
Absolutely. It's the math class is, I would say, more like life math. It's not square roots of this, that, the other thing. There's no trig, there's no algebra. It is very much, I don't want to say basic math because it's not basic, and that's a misrepresentation of basically, if you're not good at math, you can learn to be good at this kind of math. I've had many students who, through the years, who have, on our first quiz, literally sat there, and I've watched them, and they've just sat there and stared at the wall, and they handed in a page with nothing written on it. And I sat down and gave them extra help, and they passed the course. So it's definitely something that you can overcome. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And it's like I said, it's like life skills math. It's not Pythagorean theorem, etc.
Yeah. I think I refer to it as intuitive math.
Intuitive math, sure.
Yeah. There were quite a few times where you taught us something, and what went through my mind was, oh, I should have known that. Maybe I did know that. Oh, but I needed to be taught that. So that was my reference, intuitive math.
Yeah, a lot of it is. I mean, I think a lot of it you would when you learn it, you realize you do actually already know it. It's just something that you wouldn't associate with math.
Yeah, math that needs to be put into perspective, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's all kitchen related, so you can sort of see it happening. You can see it. You can hold the things and handle them and touch them. So when you're talking about converting recipes, how many tablespoons are in a cup, you can see it. You can hold it in your hand and measure it. Yeah. So it's very, as you said, it's intuitive.
Right. Okay, another question coming in for Randy. And Randy, you touched on fish and seafood. There seems to be a lot of press about how fish is farmed fish. Can you speak to that? Can you give the, average consumer and shopper advice as to how to source good fish?
Oh. How long do we have?
You can take up, no kidding. You can take up to 5 minutes.
And I mean, this is also something that Mike can speak to very, very well. There's farmed fish and then there's farmed fish. And some fish is farmed in an unbelievably responsible way. It's farmed on land and the water's cleaned and recirculated. Sometimes that fish farm is also paired with a garden. And so the waste from the fish fertilizes the garden. There are ways of farming fish in an unbelievably sustainable way. There are also ways of farming fish that are very, very destructive, where, you know, an open net pen in otherwise pristine water can cause really a lot of damage to the surrounding waters and the native fish in that water. So I would say, as with everything, you have to know what you're buying. And the best way of doing that is buying it from somebody that you trust to tell you the truth. So buying from a fish counter where the fishmongers at the counter know about their product and will tell you the truth.
Right.
That's really the only way of getting something that you can feel good about.
Right. So before you buy, do your research, establish your relationship. And I mean, this is a bit severe to say, but actually get references, do your research well.
Yeah, I mean, know what you're buying. Understand, you know, something can be farmed and it can be really, really great or really not a fantastic choice. Something can be wild caught and something can be caught wild and be a really, really great choice or a really, really destructive choice. And it matters where it was caught, when it was caught, and how it was caught. And that's kind of a lot of work for a consumer to do. But if finding good fish that you can feel, your conscience feels good about, that's kind of the work that you have to put in.
Thanks, Randy. Mike, do you have anything to add on that topic?
That's exactly, you just have to find the right place to source your whatever ingredient it is. So speaking to fish specifically, you know, I know in Toronto there's a company called Hooked. I trust them implicitly. They're just 100%. Their fish is going to be sourced responsibly. So you know, if I were there, that's where I would buy my fish. There are, I'm sure, places like that in all cities. You just have to go out and find them. I think another one in Toronto was Honest Weight, which is maybe since closed or turned into something else. But you know, they're out there, they're available, and it's not just fish; it's anything else. You know, meat, beef, pork, chicken. Same thing. You can find these things raised in sustainable ways. You just have to find it. Right.
And then you may have to make sure that you cost it properly so that you charge enough.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Well, thanks, Randy. Thanks, Mike. Before we go, I have one question for both of you, and we'll start with Mike. And the question to both of you I have is, it's 2022, we're almost heading into 2023. You have had a full season almost working at the Prune. People came back in-house eating. What do you see going forward for the hospitality industry, specifically to chefs going forward? And not just those that are new to the industry, but perhaps some insights for everyone, even those of us who may just be going out to dine. Mike, I'll start with you.
Holy mercy, that's a loaded question. I mean, the culinary world is changing along with the rest of the world. You know, coming out of COVID, knock on wood, sort of changed a lot of how we eat, how we buy groceries, how we do a lot of things in our daily lives. And in all honesty, I think that a lot of chefs are still adjusting to that new world. We're seeing a lot more takeout. We're seeing a lot more you know, people buying menu, like prepackaged like, what do you call it, like a recipe box, where you sort of get a box of ingredients and put meals together. So it's that adaptiveness. And again, I'm going to go back to Elizabeth, your first discussion. Being able to adapt is an important part of being a chef, and we're still sort of in that stage of changing from one thing to another thing. However, we are also seeing a return to normalcy, a return to what we consider to be normalcy, where people are coming to restaurants and eating and drinking and enjoying themselves. So, you know, that's a positive thing. Like the biggest problem is now having both of those things happening at the same time. It's a challenge doing takeout and seating dine-in clients it's a lot. You know, a lot of restaurants have, you know, maybe I don't want to say doubled their capacity, but they've become quite a lot busier than they had been in the past.
Mhm.
Challenging times.
Yeah. Randy?
I think that this industry is we're at, you know, the hospitality industry is at sort of a watershed point, and a lot of things, as Mike mentioned, a lot of things are changing. And I think they're changing for the better. And I think this industry is poised to become a lot more reasonable and a lot healthier, especially for the chefs and cooks and servers and managers and bartenders that work within it. Restaurants are starting to place a lot more value on work-life balance and healthier working environments for staff. And I think that's this can't change soon enough. I think it's an exciting time to be in this industry because I think it's about to become a lot healthier. Wages are improving, working conditions are improving. I think that's what's next for all of us.
Thanks, Randy. Well, everyone, we are running out of time. We're actually a bit ahead of schedule. I would like to thank Randy Rudner and Mike Booth for joining me online today with all of you. Thank you for tuning in to Chef Talks 2. This is actually the end of our 3-part webinar series. It's all posted on our YouTube channel, so you are more than welcome to follow the links and watch it over and over again. If you have any questions about being a student at the Stratford Chef School, you can email me at admissions@stratfordchef.com. In the meantime, we'll be reaching out to all of you to give you a link of this webinar and the other ones, and we will be sharing what's going on at the school. Again, thanks to Randy Rudner and Mike Booth, and thanks to all of you for joining me today. Take care.
Bye.